That feeling of waking up already tired, of knowing that today, just like yesterday, you will be fighting an invisible war. That was the daily reality for Alex. He wasn't lazy, quite the opposite. He was intelligent, dedicated, and constantly seeking the next strategy, the next certification, the next side hustle that promised to break him free. Yet, the harder he pushed, the more acutely he felt the financial sand slipping through his grasp. Every small victory was invariably followed by a larger, inexplicable setback, leaving him exactly where he started, trapped in a cramped, anxious reality defined by scarcity. It wasn't just the math. It was the emotional turbulence that preceded the math. Long before the bank account showed the deficit, Alex felt it in the pit of his stomach, a paralyzing fear that manufactured worst-case scenarios and drained his energy reserves long before he even opened his laptop. He would catch himself rehearsing failure, believing deep down that success was something reserved for others, a secret club to which he hadn't been invited. This silent, corrosive belief that he was fundamentally ineligible for prosperity acted like a self-fulfilling prophecy, sabotaging deals, clouding judgment, and ensuring that any potential abundance turned back at the door. He wasn't just broke. He was internally incongruent. He spent years treating the symptoms. He budgeted ruthlessly until he was miserable. He tried investment strategies that were lauded by gurus but somehow failed spectacularly in his hands. He worked nights and weekends until exhaustion became his baseline state. The traditional advice, work harder, save more, was sound, yet completely ineffective for him because it failed to address the root infection, the internal chaos. Alex was starting to realize that his true financial vulnerability wasn't external market volatility. It was his own volatile emotional response to money. His mind had become a factory of negative anticipation, and the low-level hum of anxiety he carried was attracting exactly the lack and limitation he desperately tried to outrun. The breaking point arrived not with financial disaster, but with a quiet, profound exhaustion. He was sitting at his kitchen table, reviewing a balance sheet that had barely budged despite 6 months of relentless effort, and he felt a clarity born of absolute weariness. He wasn't fighting the economy. He was fighting himself. The realization hit him. He lacked internal control. His financial reality was simply a mirror reflecting the messy, fearful narrative running on a continuous loop in his subconscious. He understood finally that he could not out-earn a poverty mindset. He could not out-hustle a deep-seated fear of success. The key wasn't to work more. The key was to change the internal mechanism that was constantly rejecting wealth and opportunities. He stepped back from the relentless external effort and decided to investigate the invisible. He began researching the psychology of abundance, the neuroscience of belief, and the energetic relationship people cultivated with money. He discovered that truly successful people, those who experience sustained, flowing prosperity, not just fleeting high earnings, operated from a fundamentally different emotional and mental blueprint. They weren't immune to challenges, but their internal response was calibrated differently. This was a turning point. Alex learned that there existed a systematic process, a set of 6 specific mental exercises, designed not to manipulate the market, but to reprogram the mind itself, shifting his emotional set point from fear to confidence, from scarcity to receptive alignment. These were not mystical techniques. They were highly practical tools for internal calibration, used by those who had mastered the art of manifesting their reality. They promised not just wealth, but an effortless relationship with it. For the first time, Alex felt a flicker of genuine hope that wasn't tied to a volatile stock or a new business venture, but to his own innate capacity to change. He recognized the urgency. Those who fail to master their minds remain prisoners of their past financial stories, repeating the same patterns endlessly. But those who commit to this internal reprogramming begin to rewrite their destiny immediately. The shift starts now, the moment the mind changes its allegiance from fear to potential. The immediate, almost physical relief Alex felt wasn't tied to a positive bank statement, but to the sudden cessation of the internal noise. The paralyzing, ceaseless chatter of not enough. What if I lose everything? And I don't deserve this, simply quieted. It felt like walking out a dense, buzzing hive into a clear, sunlit field. His very posture changed. The tension that had lived permanently in his shoulders dissipated. He hadn't suddenly won the lottery, but he had won something far more valuable: sovereignty over his own mental landscape. This newfound clarity wasn't passive. It was powerfully active. He performed the 6 mental calibration exercises diligently, transforming them from mere tasks into daily rituals. He began recognizing opportunities he had previously been blind to, not because the world had suddenly presented them, but because his mind was finally receptive. Before, a stressful business negotiation would have devolved into frantic damage, control driven by fear of loss. Now, observing himself operate from a place of quiet, non-reactive strategy was astonishing. He realized that the greatest asset he possessed wasn't his education or his hustle. It was a capacity to hold a steady, coherent emotional frequency, regardless of the external chaos. When his energy changed, the dynamic of the room changed. People responded not just to his words, but to the unshakable certainty he now carried. The profound implication of this work transcended financial metrics. Alex realized that his previous struggle with money had never been a transactional problem. It had been an identity crisis disguised as a budget shortfall. He had been unconsciously waiting for external validation, a large deposit, a successful launch, to grant him permission to feel safe, worthy, and abundant. But the reprogramming flipped the script entirely. Through the exercises, he established safety, worthiness, and abundance internally first. Money ceased being the goalpost of his value and transformed into a neutral resource, an energetic tool that flowed in response to his inner alignment. He stopped chasing wealth. He began attracting it, not through magical thinking, but through superior decision-making, calm negotiation, and the undeniable resonance of genuine self-trust. The journey toward financial self-mastery, Alex learned, was less about accumulation and more about continuous emotional maintenance. The exercises were the daily practice required to keep the channels clear, ensuring that fear did not rebuild the walls of scarcity. He understood that true wealth wasn't a number in the account, but the stability of the inner foundation upon which that number rested. If your mindset is robust, setbacks become feedback, not catastrophes. If your emotional set point is high, opportunities naturally gravitate toward the vacuum created by confidence. He looked back at his former self, the exhausted man fighting the invisible war, and felt deep empathy. That man was fighting the wrong battle in the wrong dimension. The ultimate financial frontier wasn't Wall Street or the local market. It was the 9 inches between his own ears. The final truth revealed itself with crystalline clarity. Prosperity is not an event you wait for, but a continuous state of being you cultivate. By mastering his internal world, Alex had not just changed his financial outcome. He had permanently elevated his life. He was no longer trying to prove his worth to money. He was simply existing in the abundant flow that always responds to coherence, turning the fearful uncertainty of his past into the fertile, unshakable ground of his future. The most vital currency he possessed was his peace of mind, and that he knew was truly priceless.